You betrayed like a pro. I revenge better.
I've always been a light sleeper. Maybe it's the mechanic in me. You learn to hear when something's wrong with an engine before it explodes. That night, lying in our king-size bed that cost more than my first car, I listened to Sloane's breathing and knew something was off. She'd been coming home later and later from her PR firm downtown. Client dinners, she'd say, kissing my cheek with lips that tasted like expensive wine and lies. Tonight she'd stumbled in at 2:30, reeking of some cologne that definitely wasn't mine. My head was pounding. Stress headaches had become my constant companion since Sloane started her new job 6 months ago. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake her, and padded to the bathroom for some Tylenol. The medicine cabinet was empty, except for her collection of anti-aging creams that cost more per ounce than gold. I remembered seeing a bottle of pain relievers in her purse downstairs. Sloane's designer handbag sat on the marble kitchen counter like a leather monument to excess. A $2,000 Hermes that she'd insisted was an investment piece. I unzipped it, fishing around for pills among the usual debris of receipts, lipsticks, and mints. My fingers closed around something unexpected, a small gift box wrapped in expensive paper with a silk ribbon. The tag read, "For my darling Sloane, to remember what you've been missing. Love, T.T. Not E for Eli, her husband of 8 years. I should have put it back. Should have walked away, taken some aspirin, and pretended I never saw it. But curiosity ended more than cats. It destroyed marriages too. Inside the box, nestled in tissue paper like some perverted jewelry, was a plaster cast, a detailed, anatomically correct mold of another man's Johnson. I stared at it for a long moment, my engineer's brain automatically cataloging details. Professional quality work, expensive kit, attention to detail that suggested this wasn't some drunken prank. The note underneath was worse. This will remind you of a real man, which you've never had. Can't wait for our weekend in the mountains. Trent. I knew that name. Trent Wallace, the tech CEO who'd been all over the local business pages lately. Young, rich, and apparently well endowed enough to commission sculptures of his anatomy. I stood there in my boxers and old t-shirt, holding evidence of my wife's affair, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Not rage, not yet. Something calculating. My wedding ring caught the light from the under-cabinet LEDs. White gold, simple band, nothing flashy. Sloane had wanted me to upgrade to something more substantial when her career took off, but I'd refused. This ring had history. Almost without thinking, I slipped it off and tried it on the plaster cast. Perfect fit around the base, like it was made for it. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud in my empty kitchen at 3 in the morning, holding my wedding ring on another man's molded member. The absurdity was too perfect. Carefully, I rewrapped the box with my ring still in place and put it back in Sloane's purse. Then I went upstairs, lay down next to my cheating wife, and waited for morning. Sleep didn't come. Instead, I listened to Sloane's peaceful breathing and planned. Sloane expected breakfast in bed on Saturdays. It was one of her little rituals, left over from when we were newlyweds, and I thought her demands were charming instead of entitled. She'd sleep until 10, then stretch like a cat and announce she was simply starving. The Saturday I was ready. I made her usual, Greek yogurt with organic berries, fresh squeezed orange juice, and coffee from beans that cost more per pound than most people spend on groceries in a week. I arranged it all on the silver tray her mother had given us, complete with cloth napkin and fresh flower in a bud vase. And the gift box, right there next to the coffee cup. "Good morning, beautiful," I said, setting the tray on her nightstand. "I found something interesting in your purse last night." Sloane sat up, her blonde hair perfectly tousled in that way that took her 20 minutes to achieve. She wore a silk nightgown that probably cost more than most people's rent. Her eyes went to the box immediately. "Eli, I can explain." "Oh, I'm sure you can. But first, why don't you open it? I added a little something." Her hands trembled as she untied the ribbon. The tissue paper rustled. Then she saw it. The plaster cast with my wedding ring around it like some perverted engagement. The color drained from her face. "Eli, you know, Sloane, I have to hand it to Trent. He's got a sense of humor, and apparently access to professional molding supplies." I sat on the edge of the bed, casual as discussing the weather. But here's the thing that really gets me. My ring fits him perfectly. Makes you wonder about the whole real man comment, doesn't it? She clutched the sheet to her chest like it could protect her from the truth. "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. The only question is how long this has been going on." I stood up, straightening my shirt. But don't worry about explaining. I've got a lawyer to see. Eli, please, we can work this out. I paused at the bedroom door. You wanted to remember what a real man feels like? Congratulations. You're about to find out what one does when he's done being played for a fool. The sound of her calling my name followed me down the stairs, but I was already gone. My lawyer was Mira Chen, a shark in a $1,000 suit who'd handled my business contracts for years. Her office downtown was all glass and steel designed to intimidate. Today, that worked in my favor. Jesus, Eli, she said, looking at the photos I'd taken of the gift box contents. She actually kept this? Apparently, Trent wanted her to have a souvenir. I leaned back in the leather chair across from her desk. What are my options? Mira's smile was predatory. In a no-fault state, adultery doesn't matter much for the divorce itself. But for asset division, public humiliation, oh, we can work with this. She pulled out a legal pad and started making notes. Tell me about your finances. Joint accounts, but I've been the primary earner until recently. The apartment's in both names, but I made the down payment from my business account before we married. Good. Business assets? Hammond Restoration is mine, established 3 years before we met. Classic cars, antique safes, specialty metalwork. It's been doing well, better than her PR job until she got the promotion. Mira nodded, scribbling. We'll need to document everything. Bank records, credit cards, any evidence of her spending on this affair. Already on it. I slid a flash drive across her desk. My buddy Randy helped me recover some deleted files from her laptop. Turns out Sloane's been documenting this relationship pretty thoroughly. Randy Kowalski? The tech guy who does your security systems? The same. Apparently Sloane never changed her cloud backup password from our anniversary date. Not very security conscious for someone screwing around. Mira plugged in the drive and started scrolling through files. Her eyebrows climbed higher with each photo. These are explicit. And time-stamped, going back 4 months. Hotel receipts? All on our joint credit card, the Ritz mostly. Trent's got expensive tastes. Mira sat back, grinning. Eli, I have to ask. Are you looking for a quick, quiet divorce, or do you want to make a statement? I thought about Sloane's face this morning. The shock, the fear, the immediate shift to manipulation mode. 8 years of marriage, and her first instinct was to lie. What kind of statement are we talking about? The kind that makes the society pages. The kind that turns Trent Wallace's tech empire stock price into a roller coaster. The kind that makes your cheating wife famous for all the wrong reasons. I looked out her office window at the city below. Somewhere out there, Sloane was probably calling Trent, warning him, trying to figure out damage control. They thought they were so smart, so careful. Let's make a statement. The process server was a retired cop named Murphy, who looked like he'd been carved from granite. Mira had specifically requested him for this job. You want maximum impact? He'd asked during our planning session. I deliver these papers at her office, right in front of her colleagues, with a little extra surprise. The extra surprise was a blown-up poster-sized photo of the plaster cast, complete with my wedding ring, mounted on foam core with a caption, "Enjoy the real thing, Sloane. Divorce papers enclosed." Murphy called me at exactly 2:30 p.m. on Monday. "Package delivered, Mr. Hammond. Whole office got quite a show." I was in my workshop, supposedly rebuilding a 1967 Mustang engine, but really just waiting for this call. How'd she take it? Like a deer in headlights. Tried to grab the poster, but I'd already set it up on an easel in their lobby. Security cameras got everything. And her colleagues? Murphy chuckled. Let's just say the water cooler's gonna be busy this week. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Sloane's number. Eli, what the heck do you think you're doing? Getting divorced. I thought the papers made that clear. You humiliated me in front of my entire office. My boss saw that. That thing. That thing is evidence, Sloane. Evidence of your affair with Trent Wallace, tech mogul and amateur sculptor. You can't do this to me. Actually, I can. And I'm just getting started. The line went quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted to the manipulative tone I'd grown to hate. Eli, honey, we can work this out. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. 4 months of moments? That's not weakness, that's a lifestyle choice. Please, let's meet and talk about this like adults. Adults don't commission plaster casts of their genitals, Sloane. Adults don't cheat on their spouses and document it like a trophy collection. I hung up and went back to work on the Mustang. The engine was seized solid, hadn't run in decades, But with patience, the right tools, and enough determination, even the most broken things could be rebuilt. Some things, though, were better off scrapped. Randy's Electronics occupied a narrow storefront between a dry cleaner and a Chinese restaurant. From the outside, it looked like any other small business struggling to survive in the digital age. Inside, it was a high-tech command center that would make the NSA jealous. "So, what's the plan?" Randy asked, pulling up surveillance footage on one of his multiple monitors. He was built like a scarecrow, all angles and energy, with fingers that moved across keyboards like a concert pianist. "I want to know everything about Trent Wallace, where he goes, who he sees, what makes him tick." Already on it. Randy's screens filled with data. Trent Wallace, age 34, CEO of Nexus Technologies. Company went public last year, made him worth about $50 million on paper. Lives in the Meridian Tower penthouse, drives a Tesla Model S Plaid, and has a weakness for expensive restaurants and married women. Married women? Plural? Your wife's not his first rodeo. Found social media traces of at least 2 other affairs in the past 3 years. Guy's got a type: successful, married, blonde. I studied the photos Randy had pulled up. Trent looked exactly like Central Casting's idea of a tech CEO. Perfectly styled hair, designer casual clothes, the kind of confident smile that said he'd never been told no. What about security? Personal protection? Drives himself most places, but he's got a guy named Mikhail Petrov who handles special situations. Ex-military, works as a driver/bodyguard/fixer. Fixer? The kind of guy who makes problems disappear. Nothing violent on his record, but he's got connections in some interesting places. I absorbed this information while Randy pulled up more files. Trent's daily routine, his favorite haunts, his business associates. The man lived his life like an open book, apparently confident that his money and status made him untouchable. "There's something else," Randy said, pulling up a new screen. "Your wife's been busy. She's not just having an affair. She's been planning an exit strategy." The documents on screen made my blood run cold. Bank account applications in her name only. Credit cards I didn't know about. An apartment lease application for a place downtown. "She's been moving money," Randy continued. "Small amounts, nothing that would trigger alerts, but it adds up. About $15,000 over the past 2 months. Our money? Your money. From the joint accounts you both have access to." I sat back in Randy's spare chair, processing this betrayal on top of the original betrayal. It wasn't just an affair, it was a planned abandonment, a calculated theft of our shared life. "Randy, I need you to do something for me, something that might not be entirely legal." He grinned. "Those are the most interesting jobs." The Meridian Tower's parking garage was a temple to automotive excess. Teslas, BMWs, Mercedes, the kind of cars that cost more than most people's houses. Trent's Model S Plaid sat in a reserved spot near the elevator, gleaming under the fluorescent lights like a black mirror. I'd been waiting for 20 minutes when he finally appeared, checking his phone as he walked. Up close, he was smaller than I'd expected, maybe 5'8" in his expensive shoes, the kind of man who'd learned to project power through money instead of presence. "Trent Wallace?" He looked up, startled. "Do I know you? Eli Hammond, Sloane's husband?" His face went through several expressions in quick succession. Surprise, calculation, then a smug smile that made me want to knock his teeth out. "Ah, the mechanic. Restoration specialist, actually. I fix things that are broken, sometimes permanently." Trent's hand moved toward his phone, probably to call his fixer. I stepped closer. "I wouldn't. This is just a conversation between gentlemen. What do you want?" "I want to understand something. See, I found your little gift to my wife. The plaster cast, very thoughtful. Really shows you put effort into your hobbies." His confidence wavered slightly. "Look, whatever Sloane told you, she didn't tell me anything she didn't need to. You documented everything beautifully. Photos, receipts, love notes, very thorough." I pulled out my phone and showed him one of the pictures Randy had recovered. Trent and Sloane in what was clearly a hotel room, her wearing lingerie I'd never seen before. "Nice composition. Good lighting. You should consider a career in photography if the tech thing doesn't work out." "What do you want?" he repeated, but his voice had lost its edge. "I want you to understand something about consequences. See, you picked the wrong marriage to wreck. Most guys, they just file for divorce, split the assets, move on. But I'm not most guys." I walked around his car, running my finger along the pristine paint job. Beautiful machine. Carbon fiber body, ceramic brakes, 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds. Probably cost more than I make in a year. Don't touch the car. Relax, I'm just admiring the craftsmanship. See, I appreciate quality work, which is why I'm curious about your plaster casting skills. That was professional-grade work. Where'd you learn to do that? Trent's face flushed red. You're insane. Maybe, but I'm also very good at my job, and my job is fixing things that are broken. Sometimes that means restoration. Sometimes it means complete replacement. I pulled a small plastic bag from my pocket. Inside was a handful of metal shavings. Know what these are? Aluminum filings from a Tesla body panel? Amazing how much damage a few strategically placed scratches can do to a car's value. Of course, that would be vandalism. And I'm a law-abiding citizen. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you about consequences, about what happens when you mess with things that don't belong to you. The elevator dinged, and Mikhail stepped out. He was exactly what Randy had described, built like a linebacker with the kind of scars that came from professional violence. Problem, Mr. Wallace? No problem, I said before Trent could answer. Just having a friendly chat about hobbies, plaster casting, automotive restoration, that sort of thing. Mikhail's eyes narrowed, but I was already walking toward the stairwell. Nice meeting you, Trent. Give my regards to Sloan. The divorce papers hit Trent 3 days later, not as a defendant. I wasn't stupid enough to name him directly, but as a subpoena for documents related to gifts and financial support provided to Mrs. Hammond during the period of alleged adultery. Mira had crafted it beautifully, completely legal, absolutely humiliating, and designed to drag Nexus Technologies into a very public mess. His lawyers are already calling, she reported during our morning meeting. They want to settle. What kind of settlement? The kind with lots of zeros. Apparently, Mr. Wallace values his privacy. I sipped my coffee and considered this. Through Mira's office windows, I could see the city going about its business, unaware of the small war being fought in conference rooms and courthouses. What about Sloan? She's hired Davidson, Klein & Associates, expensive firm, which is interesting since she's supposedly broke. Trent's paying for her lawyers. That's my guess, which means they're coordinating their defense, which means they're worried. My phone buzzed with a text from Randy. Check the news. I pulled up the local business journal on my phone. The headline made me smile. Nexus Technologies stock drops amid CEO scandal rumors. Looks like word is getting out, I told Mira. She glanced at the article. Social media is a wonderful thing. Amazing how fast rumors spread when there's photographic evidence to back them up. You didn't. Of course not. That would be unethical. But I can't control what my paralegal does in her spare time on her personal social media accounts. I had to admire Mira's style. Everything technically legal, everything plausibly deniable, everything designed for maximum damage. My phone rang. Sloan. Eli, you have to stop this. Trent's company is being destroyed. That's unfortunate. Maybe he should have thought about that before he started collecting wives like trophies. This isn't just about him anymore. His employees, his investors. Innocent people are getting hurt. Like I got hurt when I found another man's anatomy in my wife's purse. That's different. No, it's not. Actions have consequences, Sloan. You and Trent made choices. Now you get to live with the results. Please, if you ever loved me, I did love you. Past tense. That ended when you decided to document your affair like a teenager with her first boyfriend. I hung up and turned back to Mira. What's our next move? Her smile was sharp as a blade. We go public. The press conference was Mira's idea, but I had to admit it was brilliant. We held it on the courthouse steps with the city skyline as a backdrop. Local news crews, business reporters, even a few bloggers who specialized in tech industry gossip. Ladies and gentlemen, Mira began, my client, Eli Hammond, is here today to address the malicious rumors and character assassination attempts directed against him by certain parties who shall remain nameless. I stepped up to the microphone cluster, wearing my best suit and the kind of calm expression that came from knowing you held all the cards. 3 weeks ago, I discovered that my wife of 8 years was having an affair. This discovery came in the form of a rather unusual gift, a plaster cast of her lover's anatomy, complete with a note describing me as not a real man. The reporters stirred, cameras clicking. This was better than they'd hoped for. Now, I could have handled this quietly, filed for divorce, split the assets, moved on with my life. But when I discovered that this affair had been going on for months, that my wife had been systematically moving our joint assets into secret accounts, and that her lover was using his corporate resources to facilitate this relationship, I decided that sunlight was the best disinfectant. I pulled out a folder of documents. These are bank records, credit card statements, hotel receipts, and photographs, all obtained legally through the discovery process in my divorce proceedings. They document a pattern of financial infidelity that goes far beyond simple adultery. A reporter called out, "Mr. Hammond, are you naming Trent Wallace as your wife's lover?" "I'm not naming anyone. The documents speak for themselves, but I will say this. When a man uses his corporate credit cards to fund hotel rooms for extramarital affairs, when he uses company resources to pursue married women, when he attempts to intimidate and threaten the wrong spouse, that man has demonstrated a pattern of behavior that his shareholders and business partners should be aware of." More questions, more cameras. I answered them all calmly, sticking to facts, letting the evidence paint the picture. The coup de grace came when someone asked about the plaster cast. "I've donated it to the Museum of Broken Relationships in Los Angeles," I said, along with my wedding ring, which fit it perfectly. I thought it was important to preserve this artifact of modern infidelity for future generations to study. The laughter from the press corps was audible. After the conference, Mira and I watched the coverage from her office. Every local station led with the story. Social media was exploding. Nexus Technologies' stock price was in freefall. "Think we've made our point?" Mira asked. "I think we're just getting started." The settlement offer came 48 hours later. Trent's lawyers, Sloan's lawyers, and a team of corporate attorneys I'd never heard of, all crowding into Mira's conference room like refugees from a sinking ship. The number on the paper made my eyes widen. 8 figures, with enough zeros to buy a small country. "Mr. Wallace is prepared to be very generous," said the lead corporate attorney, a woman who looked like she'd been carved from ice. "In exchange for a complete retraction of all statements, a confidentiality agreement, and the return of all photographic evidence." I pretended to consider this while Mira shuffled through the paperwork. The silence stretched until it became uncomfortable. "It's a generous offer," I said finally, "but it's missing something." "What's that?" "An apology?" The lawyers exchanged glances. "Mr. Hammond, my client is prepared to make a substantial financial gesture. I don't want his money. I want him to stand up in front of the cameras and apologize. To me, to his shareholders, to his employees, to everyone affected by his inability to keep his anatomy to himself. That's not going to happen. Then we don't have a deal." I stood up, Mira following my lead. "Gentlemen, ladies, it's been educational. But I'm not interested in hush money. I'm interested in justice." "Mr. Hammond," Sloan's lawyer spoke for the first time, "my client is prepared to waive all claims to marital assets in exchange for your discretion." I looked at him like he'd suggested I sell my mother. "Your client already waived her claims when she decided to document her affair in high definition. The only thing she's getting in this divorce is whatever the judge decides she deserves, which, based on the evidence, should be just enough bus fare to get out of town. You're being unreasonable. I'm being proportional. You want to see unreasonable? Keep pushing." We left them in the conference room, probably calling their clients to report that the crazy mechanic wasn't taking the deal. "You know they'll try other approaches," Mira warned as we walked to the elevator. "Let them. I've got more ammunition than they think." "What do you mean?" I smiled. "Randy's been busy." The final piece of evidence arrived on a Thursday morning, delivered by Randy himself with a grin that stretched from ear to ear. "Remember how I said Trent had a type? Married blondes?" He spread photographs across my workshop table, like a dealer laying out cards. Different women, different hotels, but the same pattern, the same predatory behavior. "How many?" I asked. 7 that I could document, going back 3 years, all married, all targeted through business connections, all abandoned when he got bored. I studied the photos. Professional women, successful in their own right, all apparently seduced by Trent's money and status, all betrayed and discarded. "There's more," Randy continued. "Remember Mikhail, his fixer? Turns out he's been busy cleaning up more than just romantic messes. Tax issues, regulatory problems, a few inappropriate workplace behavior complaints that mysteriously disappeared." "How'd you find all this?" "Turns out Mikhail keeps very detailed records, and he's not as good with digital security as he thinks he is." I looked at the evidence spread before me, enough to destroy Trent Wallace completely, to turn him from a tech mogul into a cautionary tale about power and corruption. "Randy, you beautiful bastard. So what's the play?" I gathered up the photos, thinking. The nuclear option was tempting, but it might be too extreme. Sometimes the threat was more powerful than the execution. Set up a meeting, Trent, Mikhail, and me. Somewhere public, somewhere with good acoustics. You sure about this? It's time to end this. The meeting was set for Saturday afternoon at Riverside Park, by the fountain where families brought their children to feed ducks. Neutral ground, public space, plenty of witnesses. Trent arrived first, looking haggard. The past few weeks had taken their toll. His stock price was still tanking, business partners were asking uncomfortable questions, and the tech press was circling like vultures. Mikhail flanked him, alert and dangerous, but constrained by the public setting. "Mr. Hammond," Trent said as I approached, "I hope you're ready to be reasonable. I'm always reasonable. The question is whether you're ready to be honest." I sat on a bench across from them, casual and relaxed. A jogger passed by, followed by a young mother pushing a stroller. Normal life continuing while we negotiated the terms of destruction. "I know about the others," I said simply. Trent's face went pale. "What others?" "Jennifer Morrison, the marketing executive from Portland, Sarah Chen, the architect from Seattle, Lisa Rodriguez, the lawyer from Phoenix. Should I continue?" Mikhail shifted slightly, his hand moving toward his jacket. I held up a finger. "I wouldn't. We're being recorded. You're bluffing." I pulled out my phone and played a snippet of audio. Trent's voice, clear as crystal, discussing his collection of married conquests with someone I assumed was Mikhail. 7 women, Trent. 7 marriages destroyed because you get off on taking things that don't belong to you. My wife was just the latest trophy. What do you want? I want you gone. Resign from Nexus, sell your stock, disappear from the city, take your fixer with you. That's insane. I built that company. You built it on lies and manipulation. Time to pay the bill. Mikhail spoke for the first time. "You're making a mistake, Mr. Hammond. The only mistake I made was not acting sooner. But don't worry, I'm a quick learner." I stood up, brushing imaginary dust from my jacket. "You have 24 hours to announce your resignation. After that, everything goes public. The affairs, the cover-ups, the pattern of predatory behavior, your choice. And if I refuse, then you'll find out what a real man does when he's done being reasonable." I walked away, leaving them by the fountain with their choices and consequences. Trent Wallace's resignation was announced the following Monday morning. Personal reasons and pursuing new opportunities were the official explanations, but the tech press read between the lines. Nexus Technologies' stock price stabilized, then began to recover as investors realized the toxic leadership was gone. Sloane's divorce proceedings moved quickly after that. Without Trent's financial backing, her legal team evaporated. She agreed to a settlement that left her with just enough to start over somewhere else, preferably far from the city where everyone knew her story. I kept the apartment, the cat, and my dignity. More importantly, I kept my sense of justice satisfied. The final confrontation came on a Tuesday evening. Sloane appeared at my door, looking older than her 32 years. The stress of public humiliation and financial ruin had carved lines around her eyes that no amount of expensive cream could erase. "Can I come in?" "I don't think that's a good idea." "Please, Eli. 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. She walked into what used to be our living room, like a ghost visiting a former life. "I wanted to apologize," she said, "for everything. The affair, the lies, the money I took." Apology noted. "That's it? That's all you have to say?" I looked at this woman I'd once loved, once planned a future with, once thought I'd grow old beside. The anger was gone, replaced by something colder and more final. "What did you expect, Sloane? Forgiveness? Reconciliation? A tearful reunion?" I expected something human. "You lost the right to my humanity when you decided to document your betrayal like a teenage diary, when you planned to steal our money and disappear, when you brought another man's anatomy into our home." She flinched. It was a mistake. It was a choice, a series of choices made over months with full knowledge of the consequences. You gambled that I'd be too weak, too passive, too much of a not real man to fight back, and you proved me wrong. I proved that actions have consequences, that betrayal has a price, that some things once broken can't be fixed. She stood there for a moment longer, maybe hoping for some crack in my resolve, some sign of the man who used to bring her breakfast in bed and overlook her selfishness. "Goodbye, Eli. Goodbye, Sloane." She left, and I never saw her again. ## epilogue. Justice served. 6 months later, I was back in my workshop, rebuilding a 1969 Camaro engine that had been sitting in a barn for 30 years. The work was methodical, satisfying, taking something broken and making it whole again. Randy stopped by with coffee and gossip. Heard from Mira lately? She sent me a Christmas card. Business is booming, apparently. Turns out, there are a lot of people who want justice instead of just legal resolution. And Trent? Moved to Silicon Valley. Started a new company, but the investors did their homework this time. He's got a very short leash and a lot of oversight. Think he learned his lesson? I torqued down a bolt, feeling the satisfying click of metal settling into place. Some people learn, others just get better at hiding. What about you? Any regrets? I considered this while wiping grease from my hands. Did I regret the public humiliation, the scorched earth approach, the complete destruction of my marriage and her career? Randy, you know what the difference is between restoration and revenge. What's that? Restoration is about bringing something back to what it used to be. Revenge is about making sure some things stay broken. I looked around my workshop, at the tools and projects and evidence of honest work. This was my life now, simpler, cleaner, free of lies and manipulation and plaster-cast surprises. No regrets. The Camaro engine turned over on the first try, purring like a satisfied cat. Some things, when you took the time to do them right, worked exactly as they should. Justice, it turned out, was a lot like engine restoration. It required patience, the right tools, and absolute attention to detail. But when you were done, when everything was properly aligned and functioning as designed, the results were beautiful. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Hammond, I found your contact through a friend. My husband is cheating, and I need help. Are you available? I smiled and typed back, when do you want to meet? After all, everyone deserved justice, and I'd gotten very good at delivering it.